Hey there, welcome back to Lima Bean Living. In today's video, I will be sharing all of the rock-themed DIYs that I prepped ahead of time in anticipation of my daughter's second birthday party. We will be making birthday activities, favors, decorations, cake toppers, and even a shirt for Aubrey. So if you want some ideas for your own rock party or just want to appreciate all of my hard work, keep watching. So the very first DIY that we are going to do is going to be making egg geodes. Now this calls for Epsom salt, and first thing I gotta show you is the package that my mom had on hand was expired in 1988. I thought this was hilarious. The box wasn't even opened, and honestly, looking back, I probably could have used it. It looked just the same as the new bag of Epsom salt that we purchased. But you know, you live and you learn. So anyways, the first thing you want to do is you want to collect as many eggshells as possible and have like the larger half saved. Rinse them out, and we're going to take out the little membrane. And I don't know about you, but being able to pull off all of that membrane, at least if I could get it in one piece, was very satisfying. So once that is done, we are going to kind of discard the membrane and set these eggshells aside to dry. Once they are dry, and again, I collected these over the span of maybe like a couple weeks because I knew I wanted to make this in advance, we're going to cover the inside with some Mod Podge, which is just like a mixture of glue and water, but you could probably use white glue if that is what you have on hand. Once the inside of the egg is thoroughly coated, we are going to sprinkle in some Epsom salt and just make sure that it covers the entire part that is glued. So I kind of did a little transfer from one eggshell to the next, just to make sure that all of the edges got covered with these Epsom salts. And once you have completed as many eggs as possible, or as many eggs as you want, we are going to set these guys aside to just thoroughly dry. Once your eggs have dried completely, it is time for the next step. Now, depending on how many eggs you are making, your measurements are going to change here, but for me, because I was making a lot, I decided to boil 2 cups of water, and then once it started to boil, I turned off the heat and added in 1 cup of Epsom salt. Once that was thoroughly dissolved, I added a little bit of Epsom salt continually until the mixture was very thick and the salt really wasn't dissolving anymore. This is what you want because eventually this mixture will crystallize inside of your eggs. So while this mixture is cooling, what I would suggest, if you guys have a little egg carton or something to kind of hold your eggs upright, I would go ahead and line that with some saran wrap and then place your eggs inside. And then once the mixture is cool, we are going to fill each of these eggs with our little salt water mixture. Then it is the fun part. We are going to color these eggs, and I pretty much did 1 drop of food coloring inside each of these eggs and then just mixed it a little bit with a toothpick. Once you have colored all of your eggs and mixed it all up, you guys can set these aside, and it will take a good week or 2 for the water to evaporate and the salt to really crystallize inside of your eggs. And as you guys can see, over the next couple of days, the water began to evaporate and we started to see more crystals forming. And by the end, there was a lot of crystals, and I was really happy with the final results. Even after doing all of these eggs, I still had some saltwater mixture left over, and so I decided to fill up a little cup with some Epsom salt after covering the cup in saran wrap to make my life easier later on, and I poured in the rest of the mixture. I didn't use any glue or anything like that, and the results were kind of weird. There were some crystals that kind of overflowed on the cup instead of filling up the cup, and I was able to use those in my next DIY. So the next DIY we are going to be doing is going to be making some surprise stones that the kiddos at the party will be able to break open and discover their little reward or surprise. Now, instead of spending money on something to go in the stones, I figured, hey, maybe the kids will just like to get the money instead. And for 2 of the 5 eggs, I decided to add an extra quarter just to kind of spice it up a bit and get everyone excited to see who the 2 extra special winners were. So to make these surprise eggs, you're going to need 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of sand, 1 cup of coffee grounds, and 3/4 of a cup of salt. Now I used some regular salt and some Epsom salt because that is what I had on hand. And then we're going to mix in about 1/2 cup of water, little by little, until we get a good moldable consistency. Towards the end, I decided to put a plastic glove on my hand and just kind of mix it by hand because I kept noticing these little pockets of dry sand and flour mixture that just wasn't getting mixed with the water. Next, what we're going to do once we have like a very thick mud-like consistency is we are going to push our little surprise in the center and mold this kind of mixture around, kind of just trying to make it resemble a stone. Now I could have left these stones just as is, but I had some extra red sand on hand and I figured I'd just use it up, or at least try to use up most of it, on these little stones. So I sprinkled some on top and just kind of figured that wasn't enough, so I decided to roll the rocks in the red sand again. After adding the red sand, I figured it was still missing something and figured I would use up those salt crystals that I created with the egg geodes and just kind of shove them in these rocks. Then we go ahead and set these out to dry. Now, I noticed that mine were beginning to look like pancakes. This is because I added a little too much water. So to kind of fix the solution, since I wanted stones and not pancakes, I figured I would line a cupcake pan with some saran wrap and kind of mold these stones back into a round ball and place them in the cupcake pan. Now, the next day or after 2 days, I decided to rotate these because the moisture still kind of built up at the bottom of the stone, and you just kind of rotate them or set them out to dry once they get a little bit more firm so that they completely dry out. Then on the day of the party, the kids go ahead and take a hammer to it, or even possibly crush it by hand if they're strong enough, and reveal their prize. The next decoration only cost me $2 from the Dollar Tree, but helped give the final look of the party an over-the-top feel. I picked up 2 plastic table covers in colors that fit our party theme and created streamers by cutting strips in the plastic, making sure to leave a little section towards the end uncut. Depending on the area you are decorating, you can cut the strips lengthwise or widthwise. In my case, I only wanted the streamers to fall at the top of our kitchen table and cover a longer portion of the wall, so I cut my table covers widthwise. This decision made it a little bit more difficult for me because I had to completely unfold and refold the table covers to make the cutting easier. If you want a ceiling to floor look, you can cut lengthwise pretty much straight out of the package, but may need to purchase more table covers depending on how wide you want your display to be. I overlapped and taped the streamers to our kitchen bay window a few days before the party to save me of additional stress the morning of. The next decoration I made for the party were these little rock labels for the snacks and food. To make the stands, I gathered some rocks and used floral wire to create the wire label holder. You just need to wrap the wire around a stone 1 or 2 times, and I kind of twisted the 2 ends together until I was only left with 1 more end, and then you want to create a few loops or some other figure at the top to secure a small sheet of cardstock. For the labels, I created a bunch of identical text boxes in a Word document with the larger font stating the rock nickname of the food and the smaller font stating what the food being served actually was. I will add all of this information down below in the description box if you want to recreate this for yourself. I printed these out and cut them out. To make my labels fancier, I used my Cricut to cut out slightly larger rectangles in cardstock to glue on the back of my printed labels. I'm not gonna lie, these stands were a little flimsy. I think a slightly thicker wire would have been better, but I worked with what I had, and since these weren't going to be moved around a lot during the party, it wasn't that big of a deal. Next were these colorful gems that I used to decorate our kitchen table the day of the party. To make these, you will need about 2 foam boards from Dollar Tree, an X-Acto knife or just a sharp kitchen knife, tape or glue, and paint or markers. Essentially, we want to outline anywhere from 3 to 6 long rectangles sharing sides with identical isosceles triangles at one of the ends. For anyone who forgot what an isosceles triangle was, it is a triangle with 2 sides of equal length, and the one side that doesn't have the equal length will be the side of the rectangle. I would recommend that these triangles be as long and pointy as possible. If you end up not liking how pointy the gem is, you can always trim down the triangles. However, it is difficult to add foam board back to the triangle if you cut off too much. If you want pointy ends on both sides of the gem and plan on laying this decoration on its side, you can draw triangles at both ends of the rectangles. After you've sketched out your rectangles and triangles, it is time to cut. With your X-Acto knife, cut the perimeter of your design all the way through the foam board. For the internal parts of your design, you are just going to score the foam board. Make sure not to cut all the way through. If you do make the mistake of cutting the board all the way through, it is not the end of the world. You will just have to tape and glue in more locations. At this point, you can assemble your gem to stand straight up. Just attach the 2 ends of the outer rectangles and tape the insides of the triangles together. However, if you want a slightly tilted gem, you will have to trim the bottom of the gem. To do this, locate the center rectangle. Draw a horizontal line on only this rectangle, no more than an inch above the bottom. Then draw a straight line from either end of this sketched line to the bottom corners of the entire cutout. Cut straight through these drawn lines and then assemble your gem. Again, attaching the 2 ends of the outer rectangles and taping the insides of the triangles together. Once the gems are assembled, you can paint or color them however you'd like. I did a little ombre effect with red, blue, and yellow. I also filled in the crevices with some glitter hot glue that they sell at the Dollar Tree. Although this step isn't necessary, I just kind of wanted to give it a over-the-top feel. Again, this was a pretty inexpensive DIY that gave the rock party an over-the-top look. Time for another easy Dollar Tree DIY. For this DIY, I used some scrap black poster board from the Dollar Tree along with some Dollar Tree glitter paper and a wall cling sticker pack. I was excited to find this sticker pack because of the sparkly gems that it had. I assembled these stickers on the poster and then used my Cricut to cut out the phrase, "You are a gem," from the glitter paper. And this glitter paper actually has a sticky backing, so I didn't even need additional glue or tape to secure it to the sign. I contemplated having our guests write little messages to Aubrey in metallic marker on the sign, but I ended up just placing it near our drink station as a decoration. Now, you have to be careful if you're using transfer tape. Mine did tear a little bit, but because it was a black poster board, it's nothing that a little Sharpie couldn't fix. I'm especially proud of this next DIY. I wanted to make Aubrey a special birthday shirt, but I didn't want it to be something that she could only wear on her birthday, like, it's my birthday. I wanted it to be a little bit more unique than that. So to go with the rock theme, I wanted to design a shirt that said, "This shirt rocks," with a rock design on the front. I picked up a blank kid shirt from Michael's weeks before the party and then made the design on my iPad using the Procreate app. I also downloaded an image of rocks that I liked and traced the image, filling it in where I thought was necessary and making some parts thicker. I hand wrote the word rocks so that all of the space between the other words and the rock image was used. Once I was happy with my design, I exported the image, opened it up in Cricut Design Space, and cut it out with my Cricut. If you want more details, I've outlined more detailed steps on my crafting channel on how to do this. I will link some helpful videos above and in the description box if you want more info. I used silver glitter iron-on for the words "this shirt" and the image of the rocks, and white glitter iron-on for the word rocks. I love how this turned out, and I think Aubrey looked so cute in her little shirt. I also used my Procreate app to write out the word "to" in cursive and write out the number 2, and I actually used my Cricut to cut out a bunch of little confetti that I sprinkled on our dining room table for some additional decoration for our party. And finally, I created a little cake topper also using the Procreate app on my iPad. To do this, I drew a few squares and had them slightly overlapping. And then I wrote happy birthday, probably it felt like a million times until I got it right, so that the letters touched each other and would ever so slightly intersect with my squares, so that when it was cut, there would be no loose pieces. After cutting out my design, I thought I would go ahead and cut out a backing since I only used a single layer of cardstock for my material. To finish off the cake topper, I taped a straw to the back so that I would have something nice and long to stick into my cake, and that was it. My next video is going to give you all of the info you need to recreate this cake for yourself. So if you aren't subscribed yet, I would love for you to stick around and hit that subscribe button and notification bell. While you are at it, you can hit that like button too if you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in the next one. You've made it to the end of the video. If you didn't know already, my name is Emily from LIMABEAN Living. Welcome, we are so happy to have you. We post videos every Monday and Friday on a variety of content: lifestyle, cooking, cleaning, military life, DIYs, encouraging mathematical development in children, and so much more. Thank you so much again for watching, and until next time.